Welcome to the Taxmen. I'm Spencer, and joining me, as always,
is your brother, Drudar. Woo!
You are my brother, and I am your brother.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
Doesn't change.
Doesn't change. And you know who else has a brother now? Oh, Frank Jr.
Little Frank Jr.
Ray Jr. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. There will be no Frank Jr.'s.
Yeah, no, he was actually impotent, whereas Ray, he shoots straight.
Radel is a fertile mother effer.
Yeah, he shoots straight.
Yeah. You don't even want to you don't want to get in the shower after him. You might walk out pregnant.
Yeah. One time's all it takes, man.
One time's all it takes. Human consciousness is a raw deal. So if you couldn't tell, we're here to cap the final episode of True Detective Season 2.
Yeah. The Vinci
Omega
season.
Station. What was that, Drew?
The Vinci season.
The Vinci season, yeah. The West Coast True Detectives.
Indeed. And what a 90-minute season finale special this was.
So after 7 prequels, we finally got the True Detective movie we've been waiting for. And it had a lot of action. It probably had the budget of a small budget action film.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was. There was a lot going on. There were there were at least 2 big set pieces with the train station and the log cabin.
Cabin in the woods.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of just other equally intense. I mean, Velcoro's chase through the woods was also incredible.
Yeah, it's after you have the very urban Omega Station, and then you've got your log cabin. It gets completely rural for both Frank and Ray. We leave Ray in a beautiful redwood forest, and we leave our buddy Frank in a desolate desert.
Yeah. Oh man.
To whence they came, dirt into dirt.
Yeah, I mean, this was really an episode where we got to watch each of the characters, and we already saw Woodrow's death, and we got what we wished for with Woodrow. We didn't get any more Woodrow at all.
No, the only presence of Woodrow, which I in the Roadcast edition of the episode 7 recap, offered up payment for a Woodrow family-free episode, and I got it for free on the house.
Yeah, man. It was perfect. You only saw them briefly during his funeral. Yeah,
only during the montage when they fittingly dedicated a highway to Paul Woodrow.
Yeah, kind of poetic. And Woodrow is really the only person that dies with his name validated.
Unsmeared.
Oh my goodness.
Although, Frank probably has quite the reputation in death.
That's true. I mean, I guess among the underworld, Frank probably is a legend.
Yeah, he scored $10 million in a single stick up, which is impressive.
Although he didn't get to keep any of it.
He did it, unless you count the diamonds that embedded in his open wound.
Is that what that shot was? I was wondering if those were diamonds in his wound.
Yeah, those were diamonds in his wound.
That's
Looks
intense.
like the knife went in right where the diamonds were, and they couldn't protect them.
Suck. Oh man.
Yeah, which is probably why he was a little more reluctant to give up the suit. Although it could have just been a pride thing.
I mean, it's both, right? At the end of the day, what's more important, keeping your suit with the diamonds inside or your life? Although, I mean, the likelihood of Frank surviving.
Yeah, we don't know how far out in the out in the desert he was. How hard it would be to hitch a ride back to town.
Man.
But he didn't matter in the end because Frank, he ended up laying down, not exactly where he was meant to, in a shallow grave, but a few, not but 40 yards from it. Yeah, so
shall we work
a
our way
hectic
through the episode? There's so much to cover.
Yeah, so the episode kind of starts where we left off, and it looks like not only did Velcoro unbutton his shirt, he unbuttoned his pants.
And they had and they shared some cigarettes. No e-cigarettes to be seen.
No, the e-cigarettes are out. No e-cigarettes made it to the second half of the season.
Yeah, man. Only the real deal.
Only the raw tobacco. Wacky tobacco.
Yeah, it was a interesting opening with Rachel McAdams and Colin Farrell, Ray and Annie, sort of sharing their deepest regrets and sins. It was intense.
Yeah. Annie it's a weird situation, and I'm sure she's still learning how to talk about it. But she seemed to maybe assert that she was proud to be pretty enough to get kidnapped as a 4-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, it's the conflict, right? She says that's the only thing she really remembers is how it made her feel when she got asked to come into whatever, the shady van. And of course, that conflict of her knowing that that's disgusting, but also recognizing that that's a real feeling that she had. It's the only memory she has. That's intense.
Yeah, that's the one thing she had to deal with. But she didn't let it define her by any means.
I mean, she kind of did.
Well, up until this point, I feel like during this season, she actually more so than anyone. Well, at least she walked away a different person than once we met her.
Yeah, she did. She sort of reconciled last episode with her family, and I guess the way we're supposed to read into it is her ability to reconcile and act reasonably. She saves herself.
Yeah, so that's kind of the question. The question Annie and Ray kept asking each other this week was, "Would you run right now?" And Annie was willing to, and Ray couldn't.
Yeah, and neither could Frank. Really,
and neither could Frank. He had all but a toe out the door. He was heading to the train station for his getaway, and just short. But yeah, Annie goes through that, and then we see Ray admit for the first time, with words, although his face gave it away many times, that he actually did kill that meth junkie.
Yeah, for nothing.
For nothing, which was a brutal truth for him to deal with. But Annie took it, and as she says, in some cultures it wouldn't even be that looked down upon.
Yeah, although she says it before he admits that it wasn't the guy.
Yeah, but I feel like she still understands that he had to do what he had to do, and maybe he went to get his justice too hastily. But she knows the world isn't all blacks and whites. Mm-hmm. Like Jordan Semien said, there's you and me, and everything else is gray.
Yeah, so after that scene, we get Frank and Jordan. I honestly think it's probably one of the weakest scenes of the whole episode when they're
definitely
when they're trying to convince each other they don't love. Vince Vaughn is trying to convince her that he doesn't love her.
Yeah, and then she tells him he's bad at acting, which was really
that's an unfortunate line.
It was a really unfortunate line, especially when she followed it up with "Take it from me."
Ugh. I cannot imagine the memes that probably already exist.
Oh, I thought I sent it to you.
Oh, did you? Are there some already?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
It's just too good. In a bad way.
Yeah, that was the one scene, and there were a few that were really long, but that was the one that I was like, this is the way the episode's gonna go. Like, was the extra 30 minutes necessary? I think it was, but that was the only scene I could have done without, or could have done with a much shorter version. I would have just skipped to their fantasy, when they're sort of talking to each other right before she gets into the car.
Get in those white suits and white dresses.
Yeah, which was totally fulfilled, their little fantasy dream when he.
Well, it was just that. It was a fantasy.
Yeah.
It was a fairy tale story. But if you've studied fairy tales, you know that they usually end grisly more often than happily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most fairy tales are pretty dark, and this is a dark fairy tale.
Absolutely. And so we get the filming of that when he's walking in the desert towards her in her white dress, and the red rose on his white dress shirt is blood.
Yep.
Diamond encrusted blood.
Diamond encrusted blood. About what, 3.5, 4 million worth.
Yeah. I did love that scene though. Frank's.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it was one of my favorite scenes of the whole season.
Yeah. And a nice pairing with Velcoro's previous hypnotic post-death moment.
Yeah, they really do post-death well, except poor Woodrow never got his day in
Annie.
The in-between. Well, Annie didn't die, so she didn't have to have a post-death or teetering on death, looking into the light moment. Yeah. But I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the ridiculous throwing of the rings.
Oh gosh, that was terrible.
Yeah, especially when I thought they were on a platform, so I'm like, oh man, fell between the third rail. That's gonna be tough to fish out. But they just threw them on the sidewalk. I hope someone went and picked those up. I hope Nail grabbed those.
Oh, that whole moment was so cringeworthy. Anyway,
you could have trimmed it down. Honestly, if the question is, did it need to be 90 minutes? The answer is no.
No. It did.
They drew out a lot of the... I mean, we talked about, in our episode 7 recap, we sort of previewed this week and what we expected. And what we expected was things to end a lot close. There was a little too much between blowing out the log cabin and stealing the 10 million, and then Frank and Ray's final moments on this earth.
Yeah, and another thing that felt too convenient was Ray Velcoro instantaneously putting together the photographer connection. Almost like a shaft of light hit him in the face, and he was like, wait a second. Siblings, the day, the photographer, let's go.
Yeah, he really... I saw her talking to him.
Yeah,
and
that was crazy.
That was a sudden turn, but at least it led to some amazing action sequences.
Oh yeah, some fantastic ones. And I kind of liked the element. I mean, I guess everything we said on last week's episode was completely accurate. This really is two kind of separate crimes that just happened to, one led into the other. Their revenge killing of Casper was the catalyst that launched the whole catalyst thing.
Yeah, all their investigation into these higher up corruption. I was reading an article today about the finale on Vox.com.
Yeah, I read that one.
And they made a really great point about for all of the filler that was in this season, you really could have featured these two characters who have an incredibly interesting story, who sort of incidentally stumble. They sort of incidentally lay a trap for everyone else to stumble into this huge corruption plot that goes all the way to the top of the state.
Yeah. But they're not really concerned. These aren't vigilantes that are concerned with that, really.
Well, that's what's so interesting. That's why I wish we could have spent more time with those characters. Yeah. Because, I mean, they fit the lineage theme of this season perfectly. You have parents murdered. They find out that, we find out that their dad isn't even their dad.
Yeah, it's Casper.
Casper's actually their dad.
Or at least Casper's the dad of one of them, right?
I think both.
I thought it was implied that Casper was the daughter, the husband, or the father of the daughter, but not the son.
Ooh, yeah, I believe you're right, because I believe that their mother was actually pregnant with another love child.
Yeah.
And that was the incentive to not just steal the diamonds, but execute the family members, their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would have, it would have been cool to kind of see their story more though. You lose your temper, you incidentally wash this guy's brains out and balls out with acid. When you let things get away from you, then you find out he's your dad.
and then he just leaves the body.
Yeah, he just drove him around and dropped him off at a park. Earlier in the season, first episode, first episode, I was thinking that body was intentionally placed in Ventura so that Woodrow would get drawn in, and they wanted to, thinking in that sense that this is like an anarchist trying to expose corruption. I'm assuming that they're trying to draw multiple law enforcement agencies into this one case to kind of lead down this path, but it was all haphazard.
Yeah, which is, it's convenient. It's interesting. It was an interesting idea. A lot of people came down way too heavily, I feel, on like judging the convenience of that as a plot element. But I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting that this all sort of happened coincidentally.
Yeah, there's plot elements to question in this episode, but that wasn't one of them for me.
Yeah.
We'll get into the plot holes that or plot elements that sort of frustrated me when we get a little further into the forest.
Yeah. So
basically, the first couple minutes where we set the scene, Jordan's gone, and we find out that bar has more utilities than just exchanging illicit conversations and getting hammered drunk and seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
There's a secret room in the walk-in freezer,
which I kind of liked. I kind of liked that bartender came back and became so integral to the plot, and that whole place became a symbol almost of their salvation. I don't know. It's super interesting to me.
It was their hideaway in life and towards death.
Yes, it became their literal hideaway when before it was just sort of,
a metaphorical allegorical hideaway.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was a great decision. Really interesting.
Yeah, and then they actually rounded out the bartender, who always seemed, very appreciative. Maybe appreciative is not the right word. Tolerant of Velcoro shenanigans and his Semyon element. And it turns out that she has a history, and not only does she have a history with Semyon, she's also a political activist who seems to be who's helping smuggle immigrants in and out of the country.
Yeah, she was great, and I liked her moment, and I actually liked Frank's bodyguard's moment. I think they were both for these really pervasive side characters that only showed up every now and again. I thought they were both fleshed out and super quickly. Like, we instantly bought into the idea that these guys are actually loyal to the death type thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
No, I agree. It both those characters had a presence about them whenever they're in a scene, and it was nice that they didn't just toil away as an unanswered end. We did get this. We got to learn why they allow what they allow and why they align themselves with these people.
Yeah.
So we end up following the set photographer to the railway station. We've been talking a lot about trains this season. We finally got to go to some train stations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that probably was the best scene of the whole season.
You really think so?
Yeah, I believe so. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, it was good. I still really liked Annie's scene in the nightclub.
The orgy house?
Yeah, not because it's an orgy house, just because I thought it was so interesting layering that on top of her sort of drug-induced. Anyway, we already talked about it, but yeah, those would be my two favorite.
Yeah, I would say this. I like this scene. It was a season that spent a lot of time in the shadows, and when everything comes to light, they are in a train station that is literally floor to ceiling windows, just swallowing up all the sunlight.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And Holloway and Burris are exposed for the evil men they are.
Kind of.
Well, we weren't
to the viewer. They're supposed to the viewer.
I guess Burris sort of came out last episode when he knocked off Woodrow, because we were presuming, or I'd presumed that Burris was the impetus behind the Birdman, the Casper killing, and all that to try to expose some light, but he had his own ass to cover. Yeah,
so it was Burris, Velcoro's partner.
Well, he wasn't his partner. He worked in Vinci, and he was his overseer.
No, I'm saying like with the conspiracy. It was with the robbery of the jewels. It was Burris, Velcoro's old partner, that got killed in episode 4, and then they were working for the police chief. It was the 3 of them together that they were trying to basically kill those guys.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the technical elements of the director for this episode. I really thought it was a well shot episode, and it became more haunting and thrilling as the episode went on.
Uh-huh.
And it starts in the train station, right? So we're in there and they're meeting. Holloway and Velcoro are meeting after Velcoro convinces the set photographer to kind of stand down on his murderous row attempt, because as we know, the DVR is blank now, and so we get a shot of this camera sort of drunkenly eyeing from the exterior of the train station, and as a viewer, I wasn't sure if it was going to be one of Ossip's guys, someone, one of the Mexican gangs, who it could be. It could be another corrupt city official, Tony Chisani, but instead it's our girl Annie. She saves the day.
Yeah, she steps in. So she drops off the other kid at the bus station and then hops over to the train station. But the big thing is that the revelation with Casper, right, sends the kid into a frenzy. He jumps on him. Velcoro's recorder, which I'm assuming he was recording that as like a confession, gets crushed. And then they know, like, there's no possibility they can clear their name at that point.
Yeah. I wish he would have went and got the damn piece of hardware, because I like to believe that you could recover the contents, but I guess that it's just not in the fold. Velcoro getting out of this is just not in the fold.
No, I mean, like, they have that conversation at the beginning, being like, "Are we gonna flee or stay?" And they were like, "No, we're gonna we're gonna finish this." Velcoro says it's not in this character to leave. So they make one last attempt to see justice done, and yeah, there's I don't know, there's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. I love Velcoro's ridiculous costume.
Oh, I love that. The shot of him coming up on the escalator.
The escalators and that amazing cowboy hat, that sick denim jacket, which I may or may not have a replica of. I'm definitely going to be Ray Velcoro for Halloween this year. If that wasn't
I was about to say that, yeah.
100%. I'm not cutting my hair until October 31st.
Gotta get it has to be pre-episode 4 Velcoro.
Of course, Drew. Of course. But with the cowboy hat and the denim jacket.
The stash is a necessity.
You gotta have the stash. That's the only way people will know you. And I might have to borrow one of your pair of aviators, Drew.
Well, you can pick them up I think I picked up my last pair for $5 at your local Walgreens.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta stop by Walgreens later, so I'll pick up one of my pieces, and then I'll just need cowboy boots.
Boom. Those might be hard. You might have to borrow those.
I might have to borrow those. I might have to make some friends in Austin or something.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a great scene. But they're screwed. Like, they escape, but they know they're done.
Yeah, that was basically, with Holloway down, that was Velcoro's real last chance clearing his name. And because he knows not only is his name going to still be dragged through the mud, he's also just picked up an additional homicide on his rap sheet for sure.
For sure. Yeah, Burris is still alive. It's a shame Burris Anyway, we'll talk about that later, but...
Yeah, if only Annie had been a little further to the left. Hit his heart instead of his shoulder.
Ugh.
She might have saved her lover.
She's not Woodrow.
She's no Woodrow, but she's close.
Yeah, she is the true detective. We get that, though. But yeah.
Yeah. And maybe Maybe our boy Ray could have saved his life if he would have acknowledged Annie's a little bit better of a asset than he seemed to give her credit for. Or maybe he just clammed up because he was too scared to lose his lover.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I felt like Ray really forgot about Annie's heroics in that scene when he's running from a crazed Burris who's driving a Suburban like a drunken ass down the interstate chasing him.
Yeah. So do we want to jump to that, or do we want to talk about the shootout?
I guess we should we'll talk about the shootout. So the next big set piece, obviously, it's a cabin in the woods. Mm-hmm. And Frank found some hardware.
He did.
Thanks to those Turkish or Armenians, not specifically sure, but boy, did he ever have some hardware.
Yeah, he was ready to rock.
Yeah, he had enough stuff there to pack a SWAT truck full.
And that is exactly what they took, all those pieces, and they just marched themselves over to that sting operation in the woods.
Yeah, for $10 million being exchanged in cash, they didn't seem to have a lot of protection.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that they had a ton of bodyguards. They killed like 12 people. But they were all inside the house?
Well, there was a couple of them out. Well, yeah, no, they were.
Oh,
there
were there a few out?
There was 2 or 3 outside that they took care of really quickly. And then they just had a field day mowing guys down from the doorways.
Yeah. Although I did get maybe my second favorite line from Frank during that exchange, which was awesome, by the way. Mm-hmm. When he walked up to Ossip and was like, I guess I lied. I guess that day's today.
Yeah, that was so great. Following up on his phone call from earlier.
That was amazing.
When the lights go out, maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow. No, it was me.
And he's like, I guess it was today.
That was so good. Oh, man. And then I love how he doesn't take him out with the shotgun. He puts him out clean with a pistol to the face.
Oh, it was so sick.
Yeah, which I just read a book, and people like executing with .22 caliber pistols because the bullet doesn't exit; it just rattles around the brain.
Oh,
yeah. So there's some really visceral imagery for you.
Yeah, that's like trivia I didn't need to hear.
Yeah, so hopefully the viewers will appreciate those deep insights. That's what we bring you. I mean,
that's what we bring you.
This was an incredibly violent season.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, one of my buddies, like, maybe one of the more violent seasons I've ever seen on television. Like, Game of Thrones notwithstanding, like, when we're just talking about crime dramas set in the real world, in reality, that was there was a high body count this season.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably buried 60 civilians and about 24 politicians.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Including Chisani, who we find face down in the pool.
Yeah, and we're assuming Tony is cleaning house at this point.
Yeah, Tony's making his moves. He sees a big change coming. This is kind of the changing of the guard, and he makes his move, and looks like he ends up being mayor, which was disturbing.
Well, yeah, but it was really interesting. I love that we really only had one scene with Tony, and yet his presence permeates the entire season. It was kind of interesting, that thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. He was sort of this invisible force, which seemed to be what Pizzolatto was writing towards. A lot of the most important characters in terms of this plot were hardly seen. Mm-hmm. We only see the set photographer on the set. We only get to see his sister in 2 scenes before this week, and so a lot of this motion is all going on the peripheral while we're stuck with our sad detectives, which is maybe a more appropriate title for the show. Truly upset detectives.
Depressed detectives?
Truly depressed detectives.
Yeah. Holy moly. Yeah, that final shot of him accepting the mayor, it's just so disheartening.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, fairy tales, they usually don't end with a happy ending for everyone. And Da Vinci is truly a nightmare, an incorruptible nightmare. And and while we're addressing the montage at the end there, I think it's, we kind of think maybe there will be some justice as Annie delivers evidence and all that in her confession to a newspaper reporter. But, that same reporter got silenced in the first episode by Ray Velcoro. So
yeah,
who knows who Tony has on payroll now that's going to probably pull the same kind of stunt.
Yeah, it's just that lingering shot of him after she exits the room where he's just looking at all of the evidence, and you can just tell, I don't know, I felt like there's just no way it will do anything of value.
I agree. I don't see that ending well for them. And when I say them, that's an inconclusive statement that doesn't necessarily draw the lateral I wanted to make. I mean the world.
Yeah.
It was really bleak. Where I felt like, with last season, we were staring into hell all season, and the last moment, Marty and Russ look into the heavens. This season,
oh yeah, for sure.
We just stare straight into hell, and then we got a nice kick in the ass right down the hole.
That is a line worthy of this season.
Yeah, maybe. I wish I could just hear Frank Simeon say it.
You'll never hear him say another thing again.
One last bogus line.
Oh man. So the final two major scenes to talk about are Velcoro's conclusion and Semyon's. What'd you think of Velcoro's botched escape?
I mean, he was on his way out, man, and his son is. We start the season with Velcoro losing his figurative shit about his son losing his LeBrons, and he freaks out on his kid. But the rest of the season, he really never loses his temper like that, which, to me, Velcoro's biggest weakness was his kid. He could never principalize what the relationship was.
Yeah.
And he just was so irrational in his interactions. And so he's got a clear shot. He smiles for the first time this season talking to Annie, and can't help but drive and go see his kid one last time.
Yeah, the exit sign glaring at him from the freeway pulls him in.
Yeah. And what? To salute his kid and see him playing Dungeons and Dragons using a cop badge as his token.
Yeah, which was kind of interesting.
I think he was using his cop badge as his 8-sided die. His D8.
Something like that. It was crazy. Poor kid. That'll haunt him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, it sure will.
But he lost his recorder, so he lost all of the recordings he had made for his son. And then he makes one final thing on his iPhone as he's like frantically trying to escape, and even that never goes through. It's just soul crushing.
It was so soul crushing. Although I could not help but laugh when we zoomed in on an iPhone that says like, unable to connect. Because we've all been there, and it's frustrating. Imagine how much more frustrating it would be if it cost you your life.
Well, he never saw that sign, but
I'm glad.
Still,
I'm glad. Lord,
he did seem to have made peace there at the end. So I mean, even though he's dead, right? It sucks. He did get the smile, like he sort of had this moment with Annie where he was able to sort of go through confession, and he has that moment with his son, and he. Even as he's walking away from the fence before he finds the tracking device on his car, he recognizes, like, that's a good way to go out.
Yeah, I just wish he would have called an Uber.
There are so many options to make when you find that your car is bugged.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I would have forced Burris to gun me down in the middle of the street.
In the street. Or call 911 and, like, make sure you get arrested. And then, that sucks, but like deal with the fallout from there.
Yeah, well, I guess now that I say it out loud, like, he probably would have been gunned down in the middle of the street and there would have been nothing he could do about it.
Yeah, I don't know. And then he's in the car, and the guy is obviously terrible at tailing him.
Well, he was down to one arm.
Yeah, of course. But still, like, you can drive anywhere pretty much.
The Redwood Forest seemed like the wrong place to try to get off a final voice memo and to try and make a run for it when you are an alcoholic cokehead.
Yeah. I mean, what's the first thing you learn in Breaking Bad? It's like, never do an exchange in the middle of nowhere where there's no witnesses. Like, drive to the mall. Drive to some place crazy that you know that they're not gonna... Or if they do something, it's gonna be extraordinarily public.
Yeah.
Or drive to, like, a news place.
Yeah, make him force it to be... Exactly. I would have made him force it to be public, but it would have been a death wish either way, I guess. It's tough. I mean, you hold out hope that someone would maybe catch it on video and see Velcoro getting gunned down without his gun out, but they would have found a shotgun, an automatic rifle, and a grenade launcher in his car anyways.
And a duffel bag full of money.
He was sort of cornered.
Yeah, he was cornered. It just felt... It was very weird, the way that all...
How it all unfurled. It takes... gotta do some digesting.
Yeah.
Gotta do some processing. It's upsetting.
Velcoro definitely processed. He spent a long time sitting at that car freaking out.
Yeah, it's a damn shame. I really... He went under transformation too, but it was really just making his final piece before leaving this earth.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of fitting for his character.
I agree. I mean, that's how he starts it. I mean, he does clean up and make an effort, but even after he goes sober, which he rescinds on often, he still breaks things off with his kid. He sort of says his final wish. He says his final words to his dad, and becomes pretty clear he's in a little deeper than he can get out. I thought it was a really funny line when Holloway sits down next to Velcoro and he goes, "Velcoro, be honest, none of us thought you were this competent." And all I could say to myself is, "Oh no, he's not. He's stumbling through this just as much as the next guy."
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was another great pseudo-meta moment. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that guy. So, that was my favorite character of the season, though.
Yeah, I think we can safely say Colin Farrell had like the best handle on the incredibly grating dialogue that Palazzo sort of created here.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. He had a character that was totally fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't take along. He didn't. With Woodrow, and in my opinion, Annie, because I wasn't a big fan of her, but I grew to become a much bigger fan of her character, and especially with Simeon, they all grew into their parts more. Whereas from the get, Colin Farrell as Ray Velcoro was all Ray Velcoro.
Yeah, he was established. Like his voice and his diction and everything about his character seemed to make sense. Whereas, yeah, like, I completely agree. I think Vince Vaughn's performance was probably, like, the least convincing. And I think Rachel McAdams sort of grew into her part as it went along. And Taylor Kitsch, I thought was good. I just didn't like his character. But I don't think that was his fault. He
did not have much to work with. I mean, he was a corpse walking.
Yeah, and his justifications for everything were the least defined, and his side plot with the whole Black Mountain thing was a total bust.
Yeah. So we have one last thing. We actually talked about it, so we don't need to spend too much time. But the amazing shot with Frank at the end there.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Listen, if I got $1 million in cash, liquid, and I got another $4 in my pocket in crystal, my eyes are never stop. I cannot believe he let those guys sneak up on him.
That was crazy. So are we supposed to imply that the Turkish guys betrayed him? Because they were doing an awful lot of side glancing.
Yeah. I believe that they kind of gave a tip to where he was heading.
Or they bugged his car while he was inside or something. Because that was super convenient.
And for all those loose ends that, Frank had tied up, it turned, that final moment is the one frayed end was that gang, and it came back to kill him, cost him his life.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it cost him his life like 3 times over. Man, he was screwed. And I think we're supposed to read into it that Vince Vaughn sort of backsliding and strong arming and pushing people around just all came tumbling back to bite him in the butt.
Well, yeah, because I believe his name was Ramon, who he forcibly removed the teeth from, and that sort of led to this cartel gang showing up, and leads to his ultimate demise.
Yeah, sucks. He takes out all of the Russians, pretty much.
I know, he had it all. Chasani's out of the picture, but there's just one last card, and it fell.
Oh, man. But that was a triumphant shot, and totally fitting with Semyon's character, where they just kept asking him to lie down, and he just refused. I mean, he did eventually.
He didn't lie down. He fell.
He fell down.
Yeah.
But even in falling down, he didn't lie down. Like, his body is behind him, but his soul, like, keeps walking forward. It was awesome. It was such a amazing moment.
It really was. It was a really poignant scene. You see him getting harassed by his father. You see him getting harassed by a street gang, ostensibly from his childhood, getting tough on his own, and it's just you could tell that those are the things. I love that because it was like his character. Those are the things that drive him. Those are what pushed him to such a place where he was, he's a fighter. And it was a really wonderful way for that character to go out. Definitely, I mean, that was his best scene.
I think so, yeah. It was awesome.
And so, we talked about the montage and sort of how things go from there. So I want to, point out that scene in comparison to season 1, because I kind of want to do a little bit of comparison now and talk about the future. It was out there, and a lot of the best scenes were blurring that line between what is reality and what is a subjective character perspective.
Yeah, and I think this season was at its best when it was not about the plot, which was mind-bogglingly complex and we talked about that to death, and so is everyone else on the internet. I think it was at its best when whatever the characters were doing had this like layer of their own demons and backstories, sort of like eating at the fringes, eating at the edges, and blurring the line between reality and fiction. Those were the best, by far, my favorite scenes in this season.
Absolutely, and you have in one hand you have Frank laying on the couch or his bed, talking about this like really disturbing story, but that's just so much it's exposition. Whereas when you are in a visual medium, you want to use those like elements, these subjective perspectives, to build your characters, and that connects with me so much more. Like, I connect with Annie so much deeper when I see her subjective viewpoint and flash back to her childhood, and no lines are drawn out for me, and so I can spend the next week building that character out on my own, and then seeing how that lines up with her character over the last few hours.
Yeah, I mean, Annie got infinitely more interesting after she experienced that. We got to see like the trauma that sort of defined her. And
define the relationship with her family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even Woodrow, like, his best scene was the firefight in season 4, where we got to see like the way it was shot and the cuts and everything totally put you in that war zone, urban warfare, PTSD type moment. You got to see like why he's so messed up and like what the demons that he struggles with, and how that's like the only place where he's calm and knows what he's doing and knows how to react.
Yeah, the peace in his heart at that point is sickening, because
exactly.
He's deadly. But he as a human outside of that, as a man outside of that, can't function at all. So totally, yeah, that's well put. And then of course, one of the best scenes of the whole season was episode 3 opening with Conway Twitty singing as Ray talks to his dad.
Mm-hmm. Which actually came back. So I think the dad's speech about he's a killer cop sort of reflects on that last shot where he's shooting down all of the people on the police force in the forest.
Well, and he got killed by a cop.
Yeah, and he got killed by a cop. Was there a reference to trees in that?
Yeah. So he also references dying in the woods.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was fantastic. Like, more of those moments would have been fantastic.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's where this season, it missed the confidence you have when you have a visual. You have to have confidence in who's telling your story visually. Pizzolatto, working with Fukunaga, they were able to work together, although there was tension. But as we know, many great creative endeavors,
great art comes out of tension.
And they had the confidence to build Russ Cole's character out in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And there was a trust there that you could explore that. Whereas this season, you could tell that Pizzolatto overwrote expositional phrases because they were lacking that visual through line. Having one person to kind of oversee this type of story. And when you're doing this type of show with so much to work through and so little time to do it, you cannot make it a novel.
Which is what it became, like a really not great written novel.
A choppily written novel with some of the most ace actors on the planet.
Right. Speaking some of the most like on the nose, obnoxiously overridden dialogue that I've ever heard. Which
don't get me wrong, season 1 had obnoxious overridden dialogue, but it's blended. It was blended differently in a lot of ways with Russ Cole's subjective viewpoints, and his character was so ridiculous. You laugh constantly. Where I laughed often.
And we talked about this in season 1. Like, it's Woody Harrelson. The reason season 1 worked was Marlon Hart and Woody Harrelson.
Yeah,
that balance was so striking and so perfect. Go ahead.
Did I send you that picture I found today of Woody from last season's finale in his hospital gown drinking a pink smoothie?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's a good one. It just reminded me of the levity he brought. I mean, I had to point out a smile earlier in this recap, mind you.
Yeah, one of the 3 in the whole season. Oh my goodness, it was so dark. So if we're talking, it seems so like we're talking for how we'd like to see season 3. Like, you got to bring back the humor. You got to bring back some type of levity. And that doesn't mean I want some sort of witty Marvel film humor and dark type stuff intertwined, but you have to have some of that dark humor, and you have to have characters that you can buy. Not everyone can be super hyper literate. You have to have some normal people that speak like normal human beings do, Marlon Hart did, and his wife Maggie. She spoke like normal human beings.
She spoke like a normal human being, but she was an intermediary between the two of them. She understood the pain in Russ and could empathize with him, whereas Marty was a jackass. But he also served as the viewer foil, as in the way that he could just literally laugh at the ridiculous things Cole was saying, who wouldn't break.
Or even the 2 cops that were interviewing them during the first half of the season. They would always flash back to them, and they would help you process stuff, and they spoke just like normal human beings as well, like just completely casually.
So, as weird as it is to say, I hope that they bring it back for a third season, because it hasn't been renewed yet.
It hasn't, yeah, which is weird.
And I bet you they spent a lot of money, so they wanted to. I'm sure they're ratifying the agreement, because Nick Pizzaface needs more writers in the room, and he needs more oversight. He's not a showrunner; he's a novelist. And so you need to bring in some help, and hopefully he's going to be complying with that, because he is sort of an arrogant guy. I'm sourcing this from interviews, like lots of interviews I've read with this guy. He is a prick, which is totally fine. You can be a curmudgeon. You know, the world needs them just as much as everything else. But hopefully he'll be able to foster creative relationships with other individuals, like he did in season 1, that allows them to more tightly control the visual and narrative storytelling, and being able to trust in who's telling that story visually enough that he doesn't have to overwrite, and he can just stick to writing ridiculous, philosophical Frankisms.
Yeah, and I think I think you should wait 2 years. I don't think it should come back next year. I think it should be a bi-yearly thing. I don't know if HBO would ever buy into that. But as TV shows become so increasingly complex, and because this is an anthology, and because this season was pretty good still,
we're comparing to the gold standard, and we're dissecting it because it's the most important show on television right now.
Yeah, until Game of Thrones come back.
Well, I meant like in this from whenever it started, June to July.
Absolutely. It is really good, and it's probably one of my top 3 shows currently in the running right now. This, Game of Thrones, and probably Better Call Saul are like my favorite shows on television.
Yeah, you really gotta check out Mr. Robot, man. You're gonna totally flip out when you see that show. It's incredible. But that aside, it's I plan on watching this whole season again. I mean, I like it a lot. It's a great show. It's crime. It's noir. It doesn't rock and roll every second, but it's got a tight microscope on it.
Yeah, and I thought the ending really encapsulated lots of its major themes, and the fact that nothing really changed in Vinci. This was a show about people trying to figure things out and dismantle the system. And all of Velcoro's speeches earlier on in the season where he's like, listen, Vinci doesn't change. You can't come in and think you're going to take down the mayor and take down the corrupt. Everyone's just looking for a payout, and everything's going to shake out and nothing's going to change.
And sure enough.
And that's exactly what happened. I love that that's the way that they played it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Frank overreached and he got put down. Velcoro got taken out by his raison d'etre, by his fatal flaw, and Annie is the only one that's able to reconcile. Oh, and Woodrow, of course, calls Ray on the phone. It's I shouldn't be walking into this death threat, but I'm going to anyway. Yeah. He gets taken out by his fatal flaw as well. Annie is the only one that's able to break away. What did you think of that final shot of the two of them and their bodyguard buddy carrying the diaper bag?
Jordan, Nail, and Annie made it out. I liked it a lot. I
thought it was really interesting.
I thought it was really interesting. They drop you right in the middle of Venezuela, huge party, and they just sort of bleed away into the night. Who knows where they're headed next? But they're women without a country now.
Yeah, but they have a purpose. This idea of them co-raising
Ray Jr.
almost like the child of. I mean, I know it's not Simeon's child. But the first shot that we have of him is him with Jordan.
Yeah, and he's got that jet black hair.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're spot on with that. It's it's the child of it's a child of Frank and Ray's relationship.
Absolutely, and then of course Annie and Jordan as these symbolic caregivers. I don't know. It's such a fantastic visual image.
Yeah,
it gave me with so many it left me with so much to think about as the credits started to roll. I thought it was really strong.
Yeah, it definitely sat with me. I had to stay up late thinking about that one. But that's season 2, Drew.
Yeah, man. True Detective didn't let up. Definitely really interesting. Definitely worth talking about. I've really enjoyed this podcast this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to bringing it back. We don't have our next project definitively announced, but I have a feeling we'll figure out what we're doing in the fall for Better Call Saul.
Yeah, that would be my next guess. But there are some other shows I'd love to either rewatch or watch. I don't know. We'll have to decide where we want to go and who we want to involve. I think there's some interesting prospects out there.
Yeah, so if you're listening still, stay tuned. Viewpoint Podcast will be putting together a full digital experience now that we're winding down from 3 podcasts to 0. And we'll be booting back up as school gets started here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, hopefully with some new content coming out. And keep an eye out. We're going to try and sort of unify everything and create a web portal where we can go to for all of the different shows going on. Looking for Group is going to be filming recording its second episode this week. I know Ballers has one more week? Or a couple more weeks?
Yeah, we got 2 more weeks of Ballers.
2 more weeks of Ballers. And then we'll hopefully have a game plan coming up with where we want to go after that. But it should be really interesting. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely. But just this one last time. We're the Taxmen.
Doing your taxes. Week in and week out. Peace.
Light 'em, smoke 'em if you got 'em.